Hey guys, this is Jack from FPV Academy, and in this video we are going to talk about all the different tools that you need to build an FPV quadcopter. So you want to get into building your first quad and you don't really know what all the different things are that you need. It can be a little bit frustrating when you don't have the right tools, and sometimes you then have to run 5 or 6 times to the hardware store because every time you need something new which you didn't know. Hopefully this video will be able to simplify that for you, and you'll know exactly what all the tools are that you need to purchase to start building your first quad. The tool list is also in the bottom of this description, so if you want to have a list to go and purchase your tools, just copy and paste that, print it out, and then you'll have a list for things that you need to buy. So let's get right into it. Alright, so this is the first section of this video, and this is just all the tools that is a necessity to have when you are going to be building. So to start it off, let's look at the most important tool in your entire build, and that is the soldering iron. So this is a very, very important piece of equipment, and it's really a big headache if you don't have a soldering iron that is a quality one. So you use this almost all the time. This is what you use 90% of the time when you are building a quad, because you are going to be soldering a lot of components onto boards and a lot of wires onto new soldering pads. And if you don't have a good soldering iron, you're going to struggle to transfer the heat from the tip of your soldering iron to that electronic piece or that wire. So things you want to look for in a good soldering iron is you want one with a high wattage, at least 60 watts or higher, and you also want one that is temperature adjustable. Sometimes if you have a very thick wire and you want to make sure that you did solder that on properly, you want to just ramp that temperature up as much as you can to make sure that it does solder it properly. So the next piece of equipment is a good set of scissors. So you need some good scissors because you will be cutting a lot of wire. You will also be cutting some heat shrink. You'll be cutting some electrical tape. So to have a good set of scissors lying around, that is a very handy piece of equipment. The next one is electrical tape. This electrical tape gets used mostly to tie down the ESCs to your frame. A lot of people do use heat shrink to tie the ESCs down, but because I fly a ton, I do break ESCs quite often, and this is just the easiest way to replace an ESC, and the electrical tape does work really, really nicely. The next one is a set of tweezers. So you don't need a high quality set of tweezers, just any tweezers that allows you to grab onto wire, because a lot of times if you will be soldering, you need to heat up the tip of the wire, and this wire is going to get really, really hot. So having the tweezers there allows you to just hold that wire and keep it in place as you're soldering it onto a board or something like that. Tweezers have really changed the way and the speeds at what I can build a complete build at. The next one is a set of wire. There's a whole bunch of thicknesses. You do need a few different thicknesses if you don't have the right amount of wire on your build, or if they didn't supply you with wire. So it is really important to have some high quality wire. If you do need that, you can just grab some and attach it to your quad. The next one is a lighter, and this goes hand in hand with the heat shrink. So let's first talk about the heat shrink though. So you will be using the heat shrink if you need to cover up a piece of exposed wire on your build. So if you, for example, wanted to make a piece of wire longer, then you would attach 2 pieces of wire, and then in the middle where they connect, that's going to be exposed. So you just slip the heat shrink over it and then use the flame to just shrink that down so it sits tight and snug. So that's where we use the lighter. The next one is a high quality glue gun. So a glue gun is also really important. I use a glue gun almost on every single build to keep my radio receiver antennas in place. I use it sometimes to stick things to each other. I use it to keep other things in place. It's just a very good tool to have in the toolbox as well, and it does come quite in handy if you are building a quad. The next thing is a good set of solder. So this is a massive roll of solder which I purchased quite a while ago. I've been flying FPV for about a year now, just over a year. And it doesn't even look like I've used any of the solder, and I've built many, many quads, probably around 30 quads already. And that solder has lasted me really, really well. So what you want to look for in solder is the one that I'm using is a 60-40, and that's just the amount of lead to tin. That's just a very good average, which I found, which works nicely for me. Now the next piece of hardware is a very good hex key set. So the hex key set is very important that you get a high quality one, because if you use it a lot, then those points are going to start getting rounded off. because if it's not a high quality one, you'll be twisting it so much that eventually it'll round off a lot and it won't work anymore. So I would just recommend that you purchase a very high quality hex key set that will last you a very long time, and then also a few different sizes, up to, what is this? This is, I believe, a 2.5 mil. That should be enough to cover most of the hardware that you're going to be using. We're not really use any bigger ones unless you're going to be building bigger quads, but up to 2.5, it's basically just the 2.5, the 2 and the 1.5 that we use for most of our builds. Next is a very nice piece of double-sided tape. I use this to keep my VTX in place. I also put it on the bottom of my frame when I want to mount my battery to the frame, to just make it a little bit softer so it's not directly on the frame. So in a crash, you know, the frame screws that's sticking out won't damage my battery, and that there is at least a little piece of double-sided tape in between my frame and my battery. Then the second last one is a solder sucker. So this is what we will be using when you apply too much solder to a soldering pad and you want to get some of it off. You can just go ahead and suck that piece of solder right off. And then finally, you want a prop spanner. So a prop spanner is important because this is what we use to attach the props to our motors. And for a prop spanner, you just want one that has an 8mm fitting. So that is what we will be using to attach our props. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention. This isn't super necessary, but I really like having this around. I don't even know if you guys do get this in the USA or any other part of the world for that matter, but in South Africa we call this Prestick, and basically what it does is it attaches to wherever you push it. See, it's really tightly on there now, and then what you can even do is put a piece of wire on it, and then that just holds it in place while you might be using some solder to thin the wire or whatever. It's just really nice to stick things to and keep it in place while you are working with your soldering iron. So that covers all the basic equipment that we need for a build. Some of these things you can, you don't need to have them, such as the electrical tape. You can tie it down with just cable ties, but the electrical tape works really nicely. Also, you don't really need this, but I would recommend having it. And that's about all the ones that we don't really need. Now for the next part, we're going to look at all the equipment that isn't necessary to have, but are nice to have when you build your quad. So for this part, we have a few tools in front of us which aren't, like I said, necessary, but they are really nice to have. For example, this is a digital caliper. It's sometimes just really nice to measure a bunch of things. I don't know why I like doing this, but for example, I'll just grab a frame here and then I can see, oh, well, the frame is you know, 4mm, like they said. Okay, it says 3.9, they're very close, but it's 4mm. Or if you want to know what the size is of an XT60, because you want to see if it'll fit on your frame, then you can just measure, okay, that's 15.3, and then we can see on the frame if it is going to fit. So this is quite nice to have, but like I said, not a necessity. The next is a set of XT60 pigtails. The reason I like having these is because I build so many different quads. I just like to grab a pigtail and then I can just you know, solder that onto my power distribution board, and I don't have to make one of these up, because a lot of times you don't get them with the purchase of a frame, or just some frames don't come with them. And then so the next piece of equipment is a multimeter. Now, it's definitely not necessary to have these anymore, but what makes them nice is this allows you to see that if you are finished building a quad, if you did build it correctly and you didn't mess something up somewhere, and it will short out when you plug in the battery. So this is nice to check that you did build it correctly. And you can also just see, you know, if you have, for example, a VTX that's not working properly anymore, then you can just see if it's maybe something with the electronics, that's maybe something came loose, and this will be able to help you to see if that is the case. So I really don't use this a lot anymore. I used to in the beginning, but I've gotten to the point where I'm fairly confident in my soldering skills that I don't need to use this. So let me move all of these out of the way, and then finally this little toolbox has been a game changer for how I build my quads. A lot of times you do get a lot of hardware with a frame when you do build your quad. Let me just zoom in here so you guys can see a little bit closer. But the problem is, though, you want to have, say, for example, a triple stack of boards in your frame, and then they don't have enough hardware to accommodate that. So I have a bunch of hardware here which I've collected over time, and I believe that you can purchase some boxes with the most basic things of hardware in here. But having a box like this with a bunch of hardware which you can just grab screws, grab nuts, grab spacers, grab standoffs, whatever you need. It does help a lot. And like I also said, I basically just collected all these over the past year. These are just things that has been lying around, and I put them all in a nice toolbox, and it really works nicely when you are building a quad. So that about covers everything for this video. That's all the tools that you need. If you do think that I missed out a specific tool that you love using that changes the way that you build, let me know in the comment section below, and I might even do an updated video including that tool if I also find it very useful. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this. If you want to learn a lot more about FPV and just in general, definitely subscribe to our channel. I would really appreciate that. And I hope to see you guys a lot more active on my videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.